Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second session of Indirect Tax Laws, paper number 8 of CA Final. I hope all of you who are watching now have tuned into the first session, which took place on Tuesday. We discussed multiple things in the first session. We discussed the types of taxes, that is direct versus indirect. We looked at the constitutional amendments which got GST into the country in the year 2017. We also looked at the taxable event, incidence of tax. The taxable event in GST, as all of you should be knowing by now, is supply. So therefore, we also started the second chapter and we went through certain definitions in this chapter. We had gone through all these definitions. I hope all of this is familiar. All this was covered in detail in class number 1. And so today what we are going to do is we are going to study section 7 in detail. Section 7 talks about the concept of supply. Section 7 is also always to be read with the 3 schedules which are attached to it. And accordingly, we have to understand the particular concept. So therefore, let us start off from section number 7, which speaks about the concept of supply. Why understanding this concept of supply is important for us? Because supply is the incident which triggers the applicability of GST. So therefore, what all are covered in this and what are the essential elements of this is very important for us to understand. That is why section 7 is the main triggering section which attracts the GST on the happening of the event, which is called as supply. So therefore, section 7, supply is an inclusive definition. The definition starts off saying supply includes, that is, it is very, very clear that it is not an exhaustive definition, but it is an inclusive definition. Supply includes all forms of supply of goods or services or both, such as sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease, or disposal. So these are the 8 events which are clearly given in the definition of supply. As I already told you, these 8 events are illustrative in nature. Since it is not an exhaustive definition, it says that it includes all forms of supply of goods or services, such as. So the word such as here implies that an illustrations are given as to what all can be covered in this concept of supply. So as illustrations are given. The second one is the presence of consideration is very important. When I say consideration, it means agree to be made for a consideration by a person in the course or furtherance of the business. So therefore, this is the integral part of 7 subsection 1 clause A. It mentions about the forms of supply, that is 8 forms of supply, and the presence of consideration made or agreed to be made for a consideration in the course or furtherance of the business. Fine. So therefore, these 3 ingredients in 7 subsection 1 clause A is important. Then moving on to 7 subsection 1 clause B. If you see supply includes, it says, so first one we have seen what 7.1a mentions. So when we come to 7.1b, it says that supply also includes importation of service for a consideration, whether or not in the course or furtherance of the business. So therefore, a very, very important point, kindly note it down, is that 7 subsection 1 clause B talks about importing the service for a consideration, and it neglects the fact that it should be in the course or furtherance of the business. So that is not relevant. If you are importing a service, again, very important point, 7 subsection 1 clause B speaks only about service, not about goods. So therefore, if you are importing a service for a consideration, that is, you are procuring a service from outside the country for some consideration, it does not matter whether it is in course or furtherance of your business or not. That is what 7 subsection 1b says. 7 subsection 1 clause C mentions the activities mentioned in schedule 1 made or agreed to be made without consideration, right? So about certain activities in schedule 1, which are made or agreed to be made without consideration. So therefore, absence of consideration. Absence of consideration here. So consideration also not there. Still certain activities are deemed to be supply. That is what is given in 7 subsection 1 clause C. And 7 subsection 1 capital A talks about activities to be treated as supply of goods or supply of services as per schedule 2. So schedule 2 mentions that what are the activities? These are to be treated as supply of goods only. It also mentions certain activities. It says that these are supposed to be treated as supply of services only. So therefore, what are these schedules? You have to remember very, very carefully. So schedule 1 is activities which are made or agreed to made without consideration. Schedule 2 is activities which are either a supply of goods or supply of services. The particular supply is mentioned and clarity is given whether it is a supply of good or a supply of service. That is your 7 subsection 1 capital A. 7 subsection 2 mentions that activities or transactions which are specified in schedule 3 or such activities which the government may notify shall be treated neither as supply of goods nor as supply of services. That means it is not at all a supply. That means it is not at all a supply. There is no question of GST on this. It is not at all a supply. That is what is given in schedule number 3. So activities or transactions which are given in schedule 3 or some transactions which the government may notify, okay, which is neither a supply of goods nor a supply of services. That is given in 7 subsection 2. So what are these 3 schedules? Schedule 1 talks about what? The activities made or agreed to be made without consideration. That is schedule number 1. Schedule number 2, what is supply of goods, what is supply of services? Certain points are given. That is schedule 2. Schedule 3 is what? The supply is neither a supply of good nor a supply of service. We shall go through each schedule 1, then you will get total clarity on it. I hope it is clear. Right? So therefore, 7 subsection 3, subjective provision, that is subject to the above provisions of subsection 1, 1A and 2. The government may, on recommendations of the council by way of notification, specify the transactions that are to be treated as supply of goods and not services, or supply of services and not as supply of goods. So therefore, the government has the power on the recommendations of the GST Council. What is GST Council? We saw it in the previous session. That these transactions are to be treated as supply of goods and not as supply of services. These transactions are to be treated as supply of services and not as supply of goods. This power by notification the government can specify. That is what is given in 7 subsection 3. Good evening, Rashmi. Please feel free to keep asking your queries. I'll keep checking your queries every 5 to 10 minutes so that there is you are very clear that all of us are on the same page when we are discussing the concept. So therefore, let us try to analyze and understand section 7. First thing is the supply is defined in an inclusive manner. The same provisions are applicable to IGST as well by virtue of section 20 of the IGST Act. Okay, what is CGST Act? What is IGST Act? Again, first session I had covered. Kindly refer to that in case you're attending this for the first time. So therefore, what are the various ingredients of supply? First one is it should be for goods and services. It should be made for a consideration, but exception is given in schedule 1. Schedule 1 talks about activities which are to be treated as supplies, even though they are made without consideration. So therefore, main ingredients, it should be goods and services. It should be made for a consideration apart from schedule 1. Third one, it should be in the course or furtherance of the business. However, there are certain exceptions here. What is one exception? Importation of service. Importation of service for a consideration. Okay, that need not be in the course or furtherance of the business. 7 subsection 2, that is to be treated as a supply. And the supply should be made by a taxable person and should be a taxable supply. Very simple. Taxable person is a person who is supposed to get registered under GST. So therefore, the supply has to be made by the taxable person and it has to be a taxable supply. Right? So therefore, 2107 of the CGST Act 2007 defines the term taxable person to mean a person who is registered or liable to be registered under section 22 or 24 of the CGST Act 2007. 17. So whoever is already registered is also a taxable person who is liable to be registered. That means he has to exceed the threshold of the turnover limit. What are the turnover limit? What is the threshold limit? All this will be covered in registration chapter. As of now, you just remember a person who is registered means he's already registered under GST. That means he's automatically a taxable person. Or a person who's liable to be registered. That means he has crossed the threshold of the turnover of 20 lakhs in the preceding financial year. If you cross, you're liable to be registered under GST. Then barter and exchange are also covered. As I told you, 8 instances are given. In that, barter and exchange also is there. We shall see some illustrations based on what is barter, what is exchange, etc. And 7.1b, as I told you, it includes importation of service, whether or not in the course or furtherance of the business. I'm sorry, I think I had mentioned for importation of service as 7 subsection 2, but it is 7 subsection 1 clause B. So therefore, even though it is not in course or furtherance of the business, if there is importation of service for a consideration, that also comes under supply. Schedule number 1 covers the supplies even though they are made without consideration. Again, this is a landmark development, if you ask me. When I say a landmark development, it is a very historical development that the consideration also is no longer a criteria for levying the tax, especially levying an indirect tax. Okay, it is one of the sea change which has been brought in the GST law. That is, some supplies, even though there is no consideration on that, also it is supposed to be chargeable tax, and it is supply. What are those is given in schedule number 1. We shall go to that shortly. So as we discussed, what are the various forms of supply? Sale and transfer. Sale is very simple. You are in a shop, you are selling a product, that is a sale. Transfer, transferring the ownership from one place to the other, transferring the ownership, say, of a property or of a motor vehicle, etc., from one place to the other, or a company is sending the products from its factory to the depot or from the factory to the showroom. That also is transfer. Barter, exchange of something for something other than currency. That is your barter. If I'm providing me something in return, but not money, that is a barter. As I told, example in the previous class, I am a chartered accountant. I am paying rent to my landlord for my office. The landlord is providing the service of renting of immobile property services to me. So instead of me paying the rent to him, I am filing his GST returns on a monthly basis. So therefore, he does not give me money and I don't give him money. But still, is it a supply? Very much a supply. Why? Because 7 subsection 1 has clearly demarcated and mentioned barter also to be a type of supply. And then exchange. As I told you, if there is an exchange of one product for the other product, you have purchased a shirt, transactions in securities are happening, and transactions in shares are happening. It is outside the scope of supply because it is not a good at the first place. So there is no question of your, there is no question of taking this, you got this point. And then supply also should be for a consideration and should be in the course or furtherance of the business. These 2 ingredients have to be there. That is for a consideration and should be in the course or furtherance of the business. So I hope that the point is clear. Yeah. So few examples, as I told you, in a stationery shop, a pen is being sold to a customer. It comes under sale. A transfer, the goods are being transferred from the factory to the depot by a company, it comes under transfer. You are purchasing a new car for which you are exchanging an old car and also transferring an amount of 4 lakh rupees. New car price is 5 lakh rupees, that comes under exchange. And barter, as I told you, the CA providing the GST consultancy services to the landlord and thereby not paying the rent for a month, right? This also is a barter as per section 7. What is the significance of the term consideration? Please remember, consideration need not be monetary. It can also be non-monetary. If the person is doing an act which is in return for the supply of goods or services, that also can be treated as a consideration only, right? An interesting situation will arise in case of donations received by charitable institutions, right? So let us take an example here. Now, an orphanage is there. A charitable institution is running an orphanage, for which a fridge is required to be donated, for which they approach multiple donors, and one individual comes across and says that, okay, I will donate a fridge for the occupants of the orphanage, and he donates the fridge. Okay, on the fridge it is written, thanks, say, let us assume the person who's donating is one Mr. Ram Krishna Shukla. So Ram Krishna Shukla has donated this fridge. Okay, so on that fridge it is written, thanks for your support, Mr. Ram Krishna Shukla, as in the charitable institution is thanking Mr. Ram Krishna for donating this fridge. Is there a consideration? Very, very interesting point. Please remember, it is purely clarified that in case of a note of gratitude by the charitable institution to the donor by mentioning his name on that particular item which is donated, does not signify consideration. That means there is no quid pro quo. What is quid pro quo? Something in return. There is no something in return here, right? He is donating the fridge. We are just giving gratitude to his name. Now let us take into account the second situation, where the person who is donating the fridge, he is running an electronics company, say Bajaj Electronics. He is the owner of Bajaj Electronics, and Bajaj Electronics has donated a fridge to the charitable institution. There you mention, thanks Bajaj Electronics. That means, is there quid pro quo? It is clarified that there is quid pro quo, because the transfer of the fridge, the donation of the fridge is given, but the institution is also mentioning the name of the shop. So therefore, there is an element of marketing or advertisement for that person's business. So that is why in this particular situation, it means the consideration is there. So a problem can be asked on this particular concept of charitable institution. I hope every one of you understood this point. Next illustration, what we say for the consideration is artworks sent by artists to the galleries. That means here what happens? Artwork is there. Okay, when it comes to from the artist to the gallery, there is no question of any supply here, because it is just going there, no consideration. But if in the gallery it is sold, then it becomes significance of course or furtherance of the business. Course or further business, you have to do the activity as a part of your business. Let us take two examples to understand this further. First one, Rishabh buys a car for his personal use, and after a year it sells it to the car dealer. What happens here? He is purchasing the car for personal use, he is using it, sells it then to the car dealer after a year. Is there any profit motive here? Is there any intention to earn money here? He is just selling it because he has used it for 1 year and he wants to change his vehicle. So therefore, this is not in course or furtherance of the business. So you are purchasing a car for your personal use. After 3-4 years, you are selling it to a dealer. No question of supply. It is not a supply because it is not in course or furtherance of the business. Simple. Another example. M sells her gold bangles and earrings to age dwellers. In this case, gold bangles and earrings are sold to the jewelry shop. Again, it is a personal property which is being sold by the person to the jewelry shop. So there is no question of course or furtherance of the business. It is totally clarified that there is no question of a supply here as well. Please explain artwork again. Sure, definitely. We have an example also here. When a artwork is sent to the gallery and there is no sale, it is just sent for display. In that case, there is no consideration, there is no supply. But however, if that artwork in the gallery is sold, then it becomes a supply and it is very much chargeable to GST. Another example, an actor is there, he paints one painting and sells it. The sale consideration is to be donated to the NGO. Is it taxable? Is it a supply? Very, very interesting. It does not matter where you are utilizing the consideration for the supply of your goods or services for that matter. It does not matter where you are utilizing that. The moment a supply is done and you are taken a consideration for that, it becomes a supply. Just because this sales consideration you are donated to a NGO, non-government organization, to an organization, this money for their good work, it does not mean that there is no supply. Very much there is a supply. Then further examples, Resident Welfare Association provides the service of depositing the electricity bills in lieu of the nominal charges. Very much a supply. Resident Welfare Association is there. What they do is they provide the service of depositing these electricity bills for which they collect something. 100%. It is definitely a supply. Then admission to circus, amusement park, any fees which is collected for the admission to the circus, etc. That also is a supply. Facilitating betting transactions on horses, race course is there. It facilitates transactions and earns a commission income. Very much it is chargeable to tax and it is a GST. Taxability of cost petroleum we shall see in the next slide. A few examples here. Royal Turf Race Club is engaged in facilitating the wagering transactions on horses. Wagering means betting. Transactions on horses placed through totalizator. For providing this, race club gets commission, which is deducted and retained by the club from the total bet value. Then very much it is a supply. Fine. Taxability of cost petroleum. What exactly is this cost petroleum? Let us try to understand. Now, in case you want to do some mining and exploration of petroleum, first what you do is you enter into an agreement with the government. With the agreement, you do the production sharing agreement. And as per the agreement, it says that the moment I do some production and try to do some exploration for the purpose of recovering the discovering the oil or the gas, there are two elements to it. One is whatever cost I am spending, I am recovering that from the government. Okay, whatever cost I'm spending, I'm recovering that from the government. On top of that, if there is any profit margin what I've added, I'm supposed to share that profit with the government. I hope this point is clear. So whatever costs are undertaking towards doing the exploration, you take that from the government. And apart from that, you're also added a particular margin. And the profit needs to be shared with the government. This is what the process takes place. So here, why we are discussing this, that whatever the cost which is recovered from the government is not a consideration. That is why we are discussing this, because it is just reimbursement of cost. It is not a consideration. Only the profit is a consideration here. Apart from that, they also levy certain service charges for, say, SMS alerts or ATM charges or credit card penalty charges. So with regard to that, on the interest amount, with regard to interest on loans, there is no question of GST on interest on loans. But with regard to service charges and penalty charges, what the bank takes, in addition to the interest amount on that, GST is very much applicable. These are the important things to be kept in mind with regard to financial services provided by banks or financial institutions. Then derivatives are neither goods or services. Why it is neither goods nor services? Because it is a security. Futures contracts. Now, futures contract, an interesting point is there are two types of futures contract. One futures contract where there is no delivery of the underlying security. Purely through net settlement, the transactions keeps happening. That is, you purchase and sell the futures based on your speculation. And finally, net settlement happens. It can be a profit or a loss. In such particular situations, it is a speculative transaction. Therefore, it is a nature of security. So therefore, GST is not applicable. But with regard to commodity or currency trading, in case there is an actual delivery of the commodity or currency, okay, if there is actual delivery of the commodity or currency in the futures or the forward contract, in that particular situation, GST is very much applicable. Fine. So therefore, in this situation, actual delivery of the commodity is there, GST is applicable. Again, for commodity or currency, if there is a net settlement which is there, in that particular situation, it is there is no GST which is applicable. I hope this point is clear. Let us go back to business cover one-time sale only. So personal car or bangle would be supplied. See, business covers one-time sale. But in this case, when you are purchasing the car or bangle for your use, what is the purpose for that? The purpose is resale, or is the purpose your personal use? That is what is important. If the purpose is resale, then it is in course or furtherance of the business. If the purpose is for your own personal use, then if it is for your own personal use, then it is definitely not in course or furtherance of the business. Business covers one-time sale. I totally agree with you. But let me give another example. Now there is a motor vehicle. Okay, there are some demo cars which are available in the showrooms, which are used for test drives more than anything. So what you do is you purchase one demo car, fine, and then you add some premium and you sell it. In that particular situation, it is very much a business in the course or furtherance of the business. So purpose of usage is important. Whether you are using for your personal use, in that particular situation, it is not in course or furtherance of the business. I hope, Kaushiki, you got this point. Another interesting point, or another interesting activity, whether it is a supply or not. Lending of securities under SLS, that means Securities Lending Scheme. What is the Securities Lending Scheme? Now, there are three parties. One is a lender, one is an approved intermediary, and one is the borrower. What this lender does is he owns the security. Fine. He owns the security. He gives it to the intermediary and says that you lend it to whoever you want. Fine. You lend it to whoever you want, and then you give me the security after a period of time along with whatever interest or surplus it has generated. Fine. So in this particular situation, what the lending fee is charged from the borrowers. Whoever is borrowing the security will pay some lending fee, and also intermediaries pay some charge some commission from the lender of the securities. So therefore, in this particular situation, there are two activities. First one is the lending fees which is charged from the borrowers, and the commission which is charged by the intermediaries. Now, these are not related to the securities. These are not direct transfer of securities. Direct transfer of securities, no question of GST. But this lending fee and the commission which are charged in the course or furtherance of lending of these securities are very much chargeable to GST. Fine. So this is what is a circular which is given. Similarly, activities of intermediaries which facilitates the borrowing and lending of securities for the commission or a fee also is taxable separately. Fine. Similarly, transactions in instruments like interest rate swaps, foreign exchange swaps, etc. These also are type of derivatives only. If they are derivatives, so therefore, if they are securities, there is no question of it being a good. So therefore, there is no supply. Right. So now whether or not in the course or furtherance of the business. So 7 subsection B, please make a note of this. It eliminates the presence. You have to import the service for a consideration. It need not be in the course or furtherance of the business. An example here. Ramaya, a proprietor, has received the architect fees for his house from an architect located in a new at agreed consideration of $5,000. So he has imported the architect services from outside the country for 5,000 USD. This is very much a supply, even though it is not in course or furtherance of the business. He is using it for his house, so therefore it is a personal use. So even though it is not in the course or furtherance of the business, this is very much a supply as per 7 subsection 1 clause B. 7 subsection 1 clause C speaks about the supply without consideration. All supplies made by the taxable person, even though the same is without consideration, is covered in the 7(1)(c), specifically mentioned in Schedule 1 appended to the CGST Act. Schedule 1 to the CGST Act, this is clearly mentioned. So now we should discuss what are the transactions which are mentioned in Schedule 1, which speaks about the supplies without consideration, which are still to be considered as supply. So before going to Schedule 1, let me see if there are any further queries. Why do people do lending of securities, Kaushiki? Lending of securities people do because the securities, see, people who want to keep the securities for a long time, long-term use, rather than simply keeping it idle. They want to earn some money out of it. So they lend the securities to some other person through the intermediary and earn some income out of them, as simple as that. So once these securities are lent, because you have the asset and you're lending it to him, he is paying you that interest because he wants that money. So therefore, you're lending it to him, and therefore, he instead of securities through the intermediary, he gets the liquidity, he uses that, and again, it is returned back to the lender after a period of time. So main purpose of lending of securities is instead of keeping the security idle, just give it and generate some other money. That is the main purpose of that. Permanent transfer or disposal of business assets where ITC has been availed on such assets. So this line is very, very important here. Where ITC has been availed on such assets. Where ITC has been availed on such assets. Very, very interesting, very, very important point. Permanent transfer or disposal of business assets where ITC has been availed on such assets. That means in case you are purchasing an asset, let us say furniture. You are purchasing a furniture at say 1 lakh rupees. On that 18% GST is applicable. This 18% GST you have claimed as input tax credit. Once you claimed as input tax credit, after 3 to 4 years, you are giving off that furniture as scrap. Or say you are giving off that furniture to the director of the company for him to take it to his house and use it. You have not gotten any consideration for that. This particular transaction is a supply. So even though there is no consideration, you have to value the asset, you have to give a value to the consideration and discharge the GST on that. How do you arrive at the value? Written down value as per the books of accounts. As simple as that. In your books of accounts, the written down value will be there. You are disposing at that amount. On that amount, the GST has to be paid. But only condition here is this GST will be required to be paid only if you have availed the input tax credit on such asset. So when you purchase the furniture, if you have taken the input tax credit, in that particular situation only you have to collect the GST, even though there is no consideration. Fine. What are the ingredients to be met in case of this particular activity, which is subject to GST without consideration? First one, the assets have to be transferred to another person. That is the first condition to be met. Second one, no intention of getting the assets back after the transfer. So the moment you transfer the asset, after that, you should not have any intention of getting it back, right? Again, in case of a business asset, which you are transferring without the consideration, and you have not claimed any input tax credit at the time of purchase, it is not a supply. Simple example here is motor car. Motor car is a blocked credit. In input tax credit chapter, which I'm only going to take for you, we shall look at section 17, which speaks about blocked credits. That is credits on which the input tax credit is not eligible. In that case, one of such item is a motor car. So if I purchase a motor car, the GST what I pay on that motor car, I cannot claim as an input tax credit. So this motor car, after 3 to 4 years, I'm giving it to someone free of cost. No question of supply. We need not have to pay any GST. Why? Because ITC was not availed. That is why this line is very important, where ITC has been availed on such assets. Fine. So again, there are two items here which we have already discussed. That is why we have, I just cut it out, that goods, but still we'll just discuss. Goods sent on job work or goods sent for testing or goods sent for certification will not qualify as a supply, since there is no permanence in transfer. So therefore, if you are sending the goods for a job work or you are sending it only for the testing or certification, no question of supply. Donation we have already covered. In case of donation, you are donating the business asset. Again, it will not qualify as a supply in case input tax credit is claimed. Then other examples are car purchased by the company, transferred to director after 4 years free of cost. Then Dhruv gives old laptops being used in the business to his friend free of cost, right? In this case, it will be qualified as a supply. In case of car purchased by company transferred to director, if he has not claimed any input tax credit, this is not a supply if you give it free of cost also. But laptops free of cost, it is a supply in case input tax credit has been claimed. Fine. So therefore, the first activity in schedule number 1 was permanent transfer or disposal of assets without consideration in case ITC has not been availed on the initial purchase. The next service what is covered, again very important service, the supply of goods or services between related persons or distinct persons. So here what happens is, if you are supplying the goods or services between two related persons, if there is no consideration also, it is a supply. Who is a related person? We will see shortly. If two related persons are there, there is a supply between one person to the other person, right? There is no consideration. It is treated to be as a supply. Distinct person. What is distinct person? We will slightly have to go to the registration aspect here once again. Distinct person means a person who has more than one establishment. Let me go to registration concept for one time. What is exactly registration? In case you are crossing the threshold of 20 lakhs in the preceding financial year, you should get yourself registered under GST. What is the concept of registration under GST? In case you are having business in more than one state, you have to get more than one GST registration. Okay. In Telangana, you have one business. In Karnataka, you have one business. GST separately is given in Telangana, and Karnataka also separate GST compulsorily we have to apply. Sir, one nation, one tax, you told one registration enough. Sorry, no question, don't ask any questions. Though it is one nation, one tax, for the states to collect the revenue, the registration has to happen in that particular state also. So when I talk about distinct persons, I'm opening one office in Hyderabad, Telangana, and I'm opening another office in Bangalore, Karnataka. If there is a transaction between this Hyderabad office and the Bangalore office, that means it is assumed as if it is done between distinct persons, because both are distinct persons, both are establishments of the same person. So even though there is no amount, no consideration, GST is very much applicable, right? So therefore, as I told you, any supply of goods or services in the course or furtherance of the business by taxable person to related person, or by taxable person to another taxable person, when made without consideration, as provided in section 25 of the act, is nothing but distinct person. When made without consideration, would qualify as the supply, right? There is also a provision which says that gifts not exceeding rupees 50,000 in value in a financial year by an employer to employee shall not be treated as supply of goods or services or both. Why is this provision given here? Because in related person, employees are also covered. Related means what? If there is a supply of goods or services between the employer and the employee without consideration, it is to be treated as supply. Now, provision talks only about gifts. Now, employer-employee relationship is there. Employer gives salary, employer gives bonus, employer gives incentives as a part of his CTC or as a part of his salary breakup. In that particular situation, there is no question of absence of consideration, because he's doing the work, he's earning the money. But if employer gives certain gifts not exceeding 50,000, no question of supply. But employer gives a gift more than 50,000, it can be non-monetary also, which is not linked to the salary in any way. Like Diwali gift is there. One merchant in Surat, diamond merchant, gave cars to all the employees. Okay, I wish I could have worked there at least for 1 year. One car I would have got and then resigned. So in that particular situation, the car is more than 50,000. It is more than 50,000. That is a supply without consideration, which is covered in schedule number 1. In that particular situation, GST will be applicable. Fine. I hope this point is clear. Right? Related person is defined in explanation to section 15 of the CGST Act. Section 15 covers value of supply. Value of supply. Why is related person there in value of supply? Because in case of no consideration, how to determine the value of supply? The rules are given. So related person, that is why is defined as explanation to section 15 of the CGST Act. So who all shall be related persons or distinct persons? So distinct related person means if they are officers or directors of one another businesses. Right? I am a director in his company, he is a director in my company. Both are related persons. Legally recognized partners. Employer-employee. Any third person directly or indirectly holds 25% in both. So third person is there. He is holding more than 25% in my company. He is holding more than 25% in the other companies. And then both these companies are related. One of them directly or indirectly controls the other. Both of them are directly or indirectly controlled by third person. Together, they directly control another third person. In all these cases, it is a related person. Then members of the same family. That is, members of the same family also is there here. What do you mean by family? Family definition is there. That also we will see shortly. Sole agent or distributor also is a related person. So if a principal is there, is appointing someone as a sole agent or a sole distributor, they both also shall be a related person. Any queries till now? So transaction, Mr. Dilip, lending of securities, does it imply it is pledged? It is not pledged, it is lent, right? It is lent. Pledging is separate. Pledging is separate. Pledging means what? You have the securities and you are taking a loan for the securities. So in that case, you are the lender, you are the borrower. So you pledge the securities and you take the loan. That is different. This is different. Don't get confused. So transaction between two branches in one state, whether it is a distinct person or the same person. In case of within two branches located in one state, the dealer has the option whether he wants to take two different registrations or one registration is enough for one state. In case he operates only in one registration, no question of distinct person, because that other branch does not have a GST registration. There is only one GST registration. But if you have two businesses in one state, you are taking two different registrations for these two different businesses. The law gives you that facility also. In that situation, these both will be distinct persons. I hope this point is clear. So, scope of supply, if you see, vis-a-vis distinct person, here, as I told you, each supplier is required to obtain state-wise registration. Wherever he makes a taxable supply, provided his aggregate turnover exceeds the threshold limit, he has to get himself registered. So, but important point is, in case he has a business in the state where the supply is not taxable, then he need not get registration. Example is, I'm operating a restaurant in Hyderabad. I'm opening one liquor shop in Bangalore. Liquor means out of the ambit of GST. So I don't need two GST registrations. One GST registration is sufficient. 25 subsection 5 of the CGST Act 2017 talks about the distinct person. When a person who has obtained or is required to obtain registration has establishment in another state, as I told you, in another state, if he has an establishment, then both such establishments shall be treated as establishment of distinct persons for the purpose of the Act. Again, family, as I told you, means what? Spouse and children of the person. Family, spouse and children, irrespective of whether they are dependent or not, whether they are dependent or not dependent, they are treated as family. But with regard to the others, that is parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters, etc., they will be treated as family only if they are wholly or mainly dependent on the said person. Only if they are wholly or mainly dependent. Distinct person, we have already seen. Some examples of distinct person: a chartered accountant, Mr. M, has an office in Hyderabad, has an office in Delhi. He has to obtain registrations under both these states. Each office of Mr. M shall be treated as a distinct person. Two units of one person different located in different states, stock transfer goes from one unit to the other, very much distinct person. Diwali gift for 60,000 given to the employee. As I told you, more than 50,000, it becomes a related person, and therefore it assumes GST is applicable on that. Rishabh Enterprises registered supplier owns an air-conditioned restaurant in Virar, Maharashtra. It has opened a liquor shop in Raipur for trading of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. Here, though the businesses are there in two different states, in case of Raipur, Uttarakhand, he is in the engagement of non-taxable supply. Okay, so that is not a supply at all as per GST. So therefore, there is no need to obtain separate registrations in this particular case. And one branch is supplying the services to the other branch is a very common practice in business without consideration supply. It's a very, very common practice. So even that is why, even though without consideration GST is applicable, and since both have the GST registration, they will also get the input tax. Right? Then sometimes goods are transferred among different units of the same entity free of cost. Distribution of samples manufactured in the factory to different branches, etc., from one branch to the other. In that particular situation also, it is a distinct person. Right? So these transactions, even without consideration, will be a supply. But the conditions are the transfer of goods or services should be between different locations with separate GST registration as a transaction between distinct persons or establishment of distinct persons. So this is regarding stock transfer. Some examples: Raghuveer Fabrics transfers 1,000 shirts from his factory located in Lucknow to his retail showroom in Delhi so that the same can be sold from there. So that means 2 GST registrations are there. He is transferring from Lucknow to Delhi. That means without consideration also it is treated to be as a supply. Then Raghuveer Fabrics transfers 1,000 shirts from factory in Lucknow to retail showroom in Kanpur so that the same can be sold from there. In case there is only one single registration for state of UP, there is no supply. So here what is happening? Factory is in Lucknow, retail showroom is in Kanpur. So both are located in UP only. So in case there is only single registration, there is no supply. The answer to someone's question. If there are multiple registrations, then there is definitely a supply. Then original equipment manufacturers, when they are doing the manufacture, there is a lot of molds and dies which are sent free of cost to the component manufacturer. They are not supplied because they are not at all distinct persons and there is no consideration which is involved. So molds and dies which are transferred by the original equipment manufacturers to the component manufacturers, they are not at all a supply because neither they are related persons or distinct persons and there is no consideration also. Right? As I told you, supply of goods or services between employer and employee, since they both are related persons, any gift which is given more than 50,000 is chargeable to tax. But however, if the employee provides any services to the employer in the course of his employment, then they are not treated as supply. Similarly, gifts more than 50,000 given to the employee is very much chargeable to tax. There's a clarification which is given that certain employers also give some club membership, health club membership, fitness center membership facilities to the employees free of charge. These are not to be treated as gifts by the virtue of the Schedule 1, therefore they are not subject to GST. Right? Then the next item in Schedule number 1, which speaks about supplies without consideration, is supply of goods by the principal to his agent, where agent undertakes to supply such goods on behalf of the principal. So agent is undertaking to supply the goods on behalf of the principal. That has to be taken here without consideration. It is also a supply by agent to principal, where agent undertakes to receive such goods on behalf of the principal. So in that these two situations, without consideration also, it is to be treated as a supply. Again, in this item, services are not covered, only goods are covered. Example is manufacturer of cars A has appointed B to sell the cars. A has supplied 20 cars to B without consideration, very much a supply because he is the person who is authorized to sell the cars on his behalf. As I told you here, services are not covered, only goods are covered in the principal agent transaction. Right? So as I told you here, only goods are covered. Then, in order to determine whether one physical principal agent relationship where a particular principal agent relationship falls within the ambit, deciding factor is whether the invoice is issued by the agent or not. So that means when should a principal agent relationship be covered in this? The important point you have to see here is for invoice for the further supply of the goods, if it is issued by the agent, then it is this principal agent is very much covered. Right? Therefore, where the invoice for further supply is being issued by the agent in his name, then any provision of goods from the principal to the agent also will be covered. Where invoice is issued by the agent to the customer in the name of the principal, such agent shall not be covered. So invoice is there, agent is there. Agent is issuing the invoice to the customer in the name of the principal. Then that agent will not cover. Only those agents will be covered who is raising his invoices on behalf of the other principal. Right? Where agent is raising invoice on the name of that principal only, such transaction agent will not be covered. Where the goods being procured by the agent on behalf of the principal are invoiced in the name of the agent, then further provision of such goods by agent to principal will be covered. So agent is procuring the goods on behalf of the principal. Invoice also is given on the name of the agent. Such goods are further provided by the agent to the principal. Those transactions also will be covered here. Some examples here. Anmol appoints Bolu to procure certain goods from the market. Bolu identifies various suppliers who can provide the goods as decided by Anmol and asks the supplier to send the goods and issue the invoice directly to Anmol. So here what is happening? Agent is being appointed by Anmol. Agent is identifying various suppliers who can provide the goods. But if you see here, the supplier issues the invoice directly to Anmol. That means agent is not authorized to issue the invoice on behalf of the principal. So therefore, these particular supply is not covered here. Tintin, a banking company, appoints Mandar, auctioneer, to auction certain goods. Auctioneer arranges for the auction and identifies the potential bidders. Highest bid is accepted and goods are sold to the highest bidder by Tintin. Invoice for the supply is issued by Messrs. Tintin to the successful bidder. Here also the same situation. Now, auctioneer is just arranging the auction, but in case of the invoice for the supply, it is issued by Tintin to the bidder. So in that particular situation, if invoice is not issued by the agent, but by the principal only, that definitely shall not come into consideration as per schedule number 1. Another example, Gautam, an artist, appoints Gambhir, an auctioneer, to auction his painting. Gambhir arranges for the auction and identifies the potential bidders. The highest bid is accepted and the painting is sold to the highest bidder. Again here, if the invoice, since the invoice is issued by Gambhir on behalf of Gautam, again the transfer of painting from this artist to the auctioneer, that is principal agent, without consideration also shall be treated as supply. Why? Because invoice is issued by the auctioneer on behalf of Gautam, who is the main artist. Any queries, please feel free to post so that we can move forward. Yeah. Del creditor agent. Let us look at this clarification whether del creditor agent is covered. Del creditor agent is who? He is a selling agent who is engaged by the principal to assist in the supply of goods or services by contacting potential buyers. The main factor, the main differentiating factor between del creditor agent and regular agent is that del creditor agent, he guarantees the payment to the supplier. He'll make sure that the supplier gets the payment, right? Sometimes what happens, the del creditor agent also gives a short-term loan to the buyer in order to make the payment to the supplier. He says that, he tells the buyer that if you're not able to make the payment, I'll give you a loan. And with this loan, you make the payment. And then for this loan, the del creditor agent will also charge the service fee and the interest as well, right? Now, if this del creditor agent, he charges interest from the buyer with regard to the loan what is giving on a short-term basis, the main important point here is whether such interest needs to be included in the value of supply, whether such service fee and interest needs to be included in the value of supply or not. It totally depends on whether the del creditor agent is covered in schedule 1 or not. Totally depends on whether the del creditor agent is covered in schedule 1 or not. If the del creditor agent issues the invoice on his own name, then he becomes an agent as per schedule 1. Again, important point. Invoice has to be given in the agent's name only. Only then he'll be covered in schedule 1. Otherwise, he will not be covered in schedule 1. Then supplies without consideration. Next point. Import of services by a taxable person from a related person or from any of his other establishments outside India in the course or furtherance of the business. That means you have a related person. We have seen the definition of related person is located outside the country. From this, you are importing the services by the taxable from your related person, or if you have another office outside India, from there you are importing the services in the course of business. In that particular situation also, here in case without consideration is chargeable. So therefore, importation of services is covered, does not include importation without consideration. Therefore, this clause is inserted to rope in such services. Those are received from related persons or their establishments outside India. So from outside India, these importation of service, whichever is there, that for covered, that is. Example here, Jumru Associates received legal consultancy services from its head office located in Malaysia. Head office has rendered such services free of cost to the branch office. So import of services without consideration to related person. Very much a supply. Then so therefore we have to see an important critical point here is the import of services should be in the course or furtherance of the business. That is a very important point. A proper point here to example will be covered by the example here. Sumeda, a proprietor registered in Delhi, has sought architect services from his father located in US with respect to his newly constructed house in Delhi. The services were received without consideration. Please explain whether this is a supply as per Schedule 1 of the GST. Here, what is happening? Without consideration, importing service is there. Very much covered in Schedule 1, but an important point here we have to see is that whether these services are in course or furtherance of the business. In this particular service, it is purely towards the newly constructed house in Delhi. So since it is towards the newly constructed house, therefore it is definitely not in course or furtherance of the business. So therefore this is not a supply. Would your answer be different if the services were procured for the purpose of his new office in Delhi? Very much it will be then covered under Schedule 1, because in this particular situation, the import of service is happening without consideration for, in the course or furtherance of the business. So therefore, the answer will definitely be different in case it is procured for the new office, because then it becomes in course or furtherance of business and covered under Schedule 1. Few more clarifications here. Free samples and gifts. Free samples and gifts. That means if you are giving free samples or gifts to the customers, it is not a supply, because free samples and gifts means what? You are giving it without consideration. Without consideration, only Schedule 1 are covered. So if you are giving free samples and gifts to unrelated people, definitely it is not a supply, because it is not covered in Schedule number 1. I hope this point is very, very clear. Yeah. Then buy one, get one free offer. Technically, this is not a supply without consideration. It will be treated as mixed or composite supply as per Schedule 8, Section 8. So we shall also look at the concept of mixed or composite supply. Mixed or composite supply, we shall clearly see this. This is if you basically buy one and get one free offer. So what happens? Let us take an example here. I am selling a toothpaste for say 150 rupees, and I am giving one extra toothpaste free of cost. So technically, it is not without consideration. If you are supplying two toothpastes for 150 rupees, that means the cost of each toothpaste is 75 rupees. So therefore, in this particular situation, it shall not be taken as without consideration only. It will be a mixed or composite supply as per Section 8. What is mixed or composite supply? We shall see when we go to section number 8. Then 7.1 capital A. Activities to be treated as supply of goods or supply of services. In this case, what happens is whether the particular transaction is to be treated as supply of goods or supply of services. This is what this clear subsection says. 7.1a says what is to be treated as supply of goods or what is to be treated as supply of services. Right? So it clearly provides whether which particular transaction is to be treated as supply of goods or supply of services. So Schedule 2 gives the entire transactions to be treated as supply of either goods or services. Matters listed are primarily those which are entangled in litigation owing to in the earlier regime, owing to their complex nature and susceptibility to double taxation. As I told in the first class, various types of supplies, such as say restaurant services, where elements of both the service and sale are included, then your works contract services, all these are given full clarity now in Schedule 2. Schedule 2 very, very clearly says that what is a supply of good or what is a supply of service, and accordingly we have to take a call as to based on each particular item. Before we go to Schedule 2, any queries till now? Not in business, no supply. Okay, fine. I think you must have answered that question. So, sir, if you are giving, Mr. Dilip, you are giving free samples and freebies, then on raw material you would have availed ITC. Then it may fall in disposal of business asset under Schedule 1. It will not fall in disposal of business asset because this is basically your stock. Okay, it is your stock, and the idea is for promoting the product. You are not disposing the product. If you are giving a free sample, is it because of disposal? What do you mean by the term disposal? Disposal means you have used that asset and you don't have a need for that. And therefore you are disposing or you are giving away the asset. This is the literal meaning of disposal. But if I'm giving as a free sample, it is definitely not a disposal because I'm giving it so that the customer can use it. And if case is satisfied, the next time he'll purchase the product from. This is the logic behind free sample. So therefore, in this free sample, 100% there is no question of GST. That is free samples given to unrelated person. But free samples given to related person will definitely be covered under Schedule number 1. Yeah. So Schedule 2 speaks about what transactions are goods and what transactions are services. This is in brief what Schedule 2 speaks about. So let us look at each item which is given under Schedule 2. Transfer of title in goods. Example, sale of ready-made garments. So if you're transferring the title or you're transferring the ownership of the goods, it has to be treated as supply of goods or T. Transfer of right in the goods or undivided share in goods without the transfer of title. That means you're not transferring the title or you're not transferring the ownership. You're only transferring the right to use the goods. So renting, example is renting. If you have a machinery or giving it out on rent. So therefore no title is being transferred, only the right to use is being transferred. That is a service. As per GST, we have to take that as a service. Then transfer of title in goods, where property in goods will pass at a future date upon payment of full consideration and agreed. If there is a title in the goods which is transferred and it will go at a future date upon full payment of full consideration, right? In case of payment of full consideration as agreed, it is a hire purchase. In case of a hire purchase transaction, it is a supply of transfer of title in goods, where property in goods will pass at a future date upon payment of full consideration as agreed, right? That is a supply of goods here. Then land and building. Any lease, tenancy, easement, license to occupy the land. So therefore you have a land, you are giving it on lease, you are giving it on license, easement, etc. It shall be treated as totally a service. Similarly, any lease or letting out of building, including commercial, industrial or residential complex for business or commerce. So if you have any building, you are letting it out for business or commerce, it is totally a service. Then treatment of or process, that is job work. If you have some items on which some process needs to be carried out, you are transferring the goods to the job worker. He is undertaking the process on that and sending it back. It is a service. Then transfer of business assets. As I told you, if the transfer or disposal of goods forming part of the business, so that no longer form part of the business assets, whether or not for a consideration. Disposal of assets to be treated as goods. Then goods are put to any private use on the direction of the person carrying on the business, or are used or made available to any person for use for any purpose other than the business, whether or not for a consideration. It is a service. That means in case a director is giving the company car to the company is giving the car to travel for the director. That means the goods are being put to the private use or made available for a use other than business purpose, right? So in that particular situation, it is a supply of service because it's something like a right to use. Then transfer of business assets. Any person ceases to be a taxable person. Any goods forming part of the assets of the business. So that means what happens? The business is closed. He is no longer a taxable person. So whatever goods are forming part of the assets shall be deemed to be a supply in the course or furtherance of the business immediately before he ceases to be a taxable person. Okay, before he ceases to be a taxable person, in that particular situation shall deemed to be a supply immediately before he ceases to be a taxable person. Except business is transferred as going concern to another person, business is carried on by a personal representative who is deemed to be a taxable person. In these is a supply, right? If you are transferring the business as a going concern means the business is continued by some other person, then it will not come in this particular aspect. Secondly, if the taxable person is giving the business continuity job to a personal representative, then also it will not come, right? Mainly when it will come when you stop to be a taxable person and you are just lying it in the stock without doing anything. Very simple. If you have a business, you're closing the business, but you have some stock which is lying. These stocks shall be deemed to be a supply. It is deemed to be a supply in course of furtherance of the business. Those shall be treated as supply of goods. Then some other aspects where it clearly says that it should be treated as supply of service. One is renting of immovable property. Immovable property is there. You are giving it out on rent. It is to be treated as supply of service only. Second thing, very, very interesting. This has been one of the most confusing areas of GST ever since.
In progress.
Yeah. Am I audible? Suddenly the screen went blank, so I just want to check. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'm audible, right? I hope you get a completion certificate from the municipal authorities. After you get the completion certificate from the municipal authorities, you are selling this building or civil structure. That is not covered here. That is not covered. What is covered here? That is you are constructing and you are taking the consideration from the buyers before itself, right? Before completion itself. Very simple. You are into construction of apartments. When you are constructing the ground floor, you are telling your friend, boss, I'm doing a construction business here. I'm doing a ground floor. You want to book a flat? This is the price. So give this price. I will do the construction. So first only you are taking the money from your friend. Supply of service. That is what is covered. Same example. You completed the flats. Later you are selling. It is not comes under the schedule to this point. Fine. And here construction also includes additions, alterations, replacement, or remodeling of any existing civil structure. Then going forward, temporary transfer or permitting the use or enjoyment of any intellectual property right. Fine. If you have any IPR and you're transferring it for a limited purpose, for a temporary transfer, then also it is to be treated as supply of service. Then development, design, programming, customization, adaptation, upgradation, enhancement, implementation of IT software. In that particular situation, this is also to be treated as supply of service only. Customization, programming software, supply of GST software to the clients for smooth processing of returns, treated as supply of service. Then agreeing to the obligation to refrain from an act or to tolerate an act or situation or to do an act. This is something like a non-compete or if you are getting paid for tolerating the non-performance. An example is a person had to do something, but he has not done. So therefore, you take some money from him for that. That is a supply of sorry, that is treated as supply of service. So liquidated damages, example, liquidated damages under a contract for non-performance or short performance on obligation, this also is to be treated as supply of service. You enter into an agreement, as per the agreement the services has not been provided, so therefore you claim damages for that, so that also is to be treated as supply of service as per schedule number 2. Then transfer of right to use any goods for any purpose, okay, for cash, deferred payment, or valuable consideration. So if you have any goods, you're transferring the right to use the goods for any purpose, for cash or any consideration or deferred payment, it will be treated as supply of service. Following composite supplies shall be treated as supply of service. So this is the particular, these aspects before GST came into the picture were very, very complicated and suffered from huge double taxation problems. Why? Because works contract, VAT was applicable, service tax was applicable. On restaurants, food, restaurants business, sale of food, VAT was applicable. Service of restaurant, service tax was applicable. So both were applicable. So that is why these services suffered huge double taxation issues prior to GST coming into the picture. So works contract, as per 2 subsection 119 of the CGST Act, it includes all of this. Any contract for construction, fabrication, etc. if you're doing, but goods are also involved here. So if you're doing a construction, if you're doing a repair, goods and service portion both are involved. But it's very, very clear that, so it is a composite supply. So what is a composite supply? Where more than one good is involved, or one good and one service is involved, or 2 services are in. It is a composite supply. But this composite supply of works contract shall be treated as supply of service only. Then the next one. Supply by way of any part of any service or in any other manner of goods being food or any other article for human consumption or any drink, wherein such supply of service is for cash, deferred payment, or valuable consideration. So therefore, in this particular situation, if you are supplying the goods which is a food or drink for other than alcoholic liquor, why is alcoholic liquor not considered? Please refer to first class. We have discussed at length about why it is not covered. Right? So restaurant services or catering services is to be treated purely as a supply of services under GST. Very simple. Then supply of goods by unincorporated AOP or BOP to member thereof for cash deferred payment. As I told you, Residential Welfare Association is selling air conditioners to the residents at a concessional price. This also, it is treated as supply of goods. Few clarifications with regard to schedule number 2. Taxability of tenancy rights, right? What is tenancy rights? In case of a rental agreement, apart from paying the regular rent, the tenant also gets some tenancy rights to the property. So, okay. So in this particular situation, tenancy rights is being transferred. For this tenancy rights, the premium is paid by the tenant, which is called tenancy premium. This also is to be treated as supply of service only. If the government has clarified with regard to the same. Then priority sector lending certificates. Priority sector lending certificates are in the nature of scrips, wherein if you have that certificate, the RBI will give you lending on priority basis. These are tradable. Okay, these are tradable and earlier attracted VAT. So these certificates assume the character of goods in GST. This also has been clarified. Then joint venture is there. 4 or 5 different people have formed a joint venture for any particular business. What is a joint venture? It is formed for a temporary period for a particular object for a particular business. If joint venture, 4 people contribute investments, like 5 people join, each one contribute 1 lakh each. 5 lakhs is contributed. 1 lakh contribution of that person to the joint venture is not in the nature of supply because it is in the nature of investment. Right? So that was your schedule 2. Before we go to schedule 3, let me see if there are any queries. Donations given as promotion is a supply, and free sample, which is also for promotion, is not a supply. What is the difference? a donation which is given. Okay, a donation is given for what purpose? Donation is given, actually, the word donation means that there is no consideration for that. You give some money. Okay, whereas samples you give the product, but in donations you give the money or you give that particular product. Two things are there, right? If you are giving the product to a not-for-profit organization, for charitable organization, just because you want to do some good to the society. So what is your object here? The objective is not promotion. The object is doing good to the society, provided your name is not mentioned on those particular things, right? But if you are doing a donation, but if there is also a marketing attached to that, right? If the name of the company is mentioned very, very clearly, and you are paying the money to the charitable institution, you're sending the fridge in our example to the charitable institution, there the name of the company is imprinted on that. So definitely there is a consideration, but I never said that whether that is taxable or exempt. 100% in this particular situation, it is a supply. Fine, it is a supply without consideration because there is a quid pro quo. So when I told that example, it is purely on understanding the term of the consideration, not whether it is a supply or not a supply. So in one words, both what you are telling is somewhat the same. Free samples you are giving for promotion to an unrelated person. This fridge you are donating to an unrelated person. Both are pretty much the same. But I spoke about that example only to address consideration aspect, whether there is a consideration or not. That is why I took that example. I hope it is clear. Yeah. Now, Schedule 3, what are covered which are not neither a supply of goods nor a supply of services. First one is the services by an employee to an employer in the course or in relation to the employment. That is, an employee is providing the services to the employer. In the course of employment, it is neither a supply of good nor a supply of service. Second one, services by a court or tribunal established under any law for the time being in force. Court is there, tribunal is there. Again, the Consumer Redressal Commission also charges some fee in case you want to file a consumer complaint. That also is neither a supply of goods nor a supply of services as clarified. Then functions performed by MLAs, member of panchayats, members of municipalities, etc. Any person who holds any post in pursuance of the provision of the constitution. He is holding any post, any director post in any public sector undertaking as per the powers of the constitution, duties performed as a chairperson or member in any body established by the government, right? And who is not an employee before the commencement. All this is neither a supply of goods nor a supply of service. Funeral services, burial services, crematorium, mortuary, including transportation service of the deceased person. At least after he is no more, there's no question of charging the tax on him. That is why at least here it is neither a supply of goods nor a supply of service. These list of services has been taken straight away from a negative list. What is a negative list in service tax? There was a concept called negative list. That is a list of services which are not subject to GST. From there, these items have been taken. And then sale of land and subject to clause B of paragraph 5 of schedule 2, what we just saw. We are before receiving the completion certificate. If he is getting any consideration, it is a supply of service. But if there is a sale and if there is a sale of building where the consideration, sale of land, though, it is totally neither a supply of good nor a supply of service. In case of building, if you are getting the consideration totally after the completion certificate, a supply of goods nor a supply of services. But if you are getting the consideration before itself, before the construction or at the time of construction, in that particular situation, it is a supply of service. Actionable claims other than lottery, betting and gambling, as I told you, this also is totally not a supply of goods, not a supply of services. Then out and out supplies. That is, if there is a supply of goods without the product coming into the country, you are calling up one person, you are procuring one product from another country, you are asking that person to directly ship it to your customer in another country. The product does not come into India as well. It is not a supply for the purpose of GST. Then supply of warehoused goods to any person before clearance for home consumption. So goods are there imported, they are put in the customs warehouse. Before it is cleared for home consumption, you sell it to that person. Fine. In that also, it is neither a supply of good nor a supply of service. Assign it to any other person by endorsement of documents of title. After the goods are dispatched, but before clearance for home consumption, if you are transferring to some other person, high sea sales, these are called high sea sales, also not supply of goods. Example, Prasoon of India imported some goods from Japan. While the goods were in high seas, Prasoon sold the goods to Jinesh in India by way of endorsement of documents or title. This transaction is neither a supply of goods nor a supply of service. Then activities or transactions undertaken by the central government, state government, etc., where they are engaged as public authorities, municipal authorities, functions, what they do, all that is exempt, neither a supply of good nor a supply of service. Further aspects of clarification which is given with regard to Schedule 3, that is non-supplies, activities in relation to panchayats or municipal functions are not a supply of goods, not a supply of service. Granting of alcoholic liquor license. Each state grants a liquor license for the purpose of sale of liquor in shops or sale of liquor in restaurants. These are also not covered in GST. Then interstate movement of various modes of conveyance. That trains are moving from one state to the other, buses are moving from one state to the other. It is not a supply. But if the movement is for further supply, that means buses are being sold from one state to the other, and the buses are moving from one state to the other because the buses themselves are supplying to another state, then it is a supply of goods. Similar way, interstate movement of rigs, tools, spares, all goods on wheels like cranes, etc., are also non-supplies. But again, if the movement is for further supply of these vehicles, cranes, etc., then it is very much a supply. With this, we come to the end of section 7 and the 3 schedules which we have seen in great elaboration. So let me see if there are any questions, and then we'll take a small break and continue back with the concepts of composite and mixed supply. Fine. Any further queries? Let me know. I hope I'm not going too fast. In case I'm going too fast, let me know. Because it's very important for you to understand all this very carefully. So wherever you think I'm going fast, please let me know. Okay, so let's take a 10-minute break and I will see you back in the next 10 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. So I hope all of you got clarity on section 7 along with schedules 1 to 3. And let me see if we have any further queries. Yeah. So the next important point what we are going to address is section 8, which is composite supply or mixed supply. What do you mean by the term composite supply? And what do you mean by the term mixed supply? Example, if you are selling a laptop and if you pull items which are marketed as one product and are sold to the consumer, this is nothing but your composite supply or mixed supply. So these bundled products can either be a composite supply or it can be a mixed supply. So let us see, section 8 talks about how the tax liability needs to be determined for composite or mixed supply shall be determined in the following manner. Namely, if the composite supply comprises of 2 or more supplies, one of which is a principal supply, then it shall be treated as if it is a supply of such principal supply. Example, laptop and laptop bag. Fine. So it is a composite supply comprising of 2 or more supplies, one of which is a principal supply. So therefore here, if a laptop is there and a laptop bag is there, the principal supply is the laptop itself, right? The principal supply is the laptop itself. So therefore, we shall treat as if it is a supply of the laptop. Then, mixed supply means what? Where there are 2 or more rate of tax. So, mixed supply means you'll never know. Okay, mixed supply, you never know gift packages. If you are getting a gift on Diwali, which has flowers, which has chocolates, which has sweets, which has dry fruits, multiple products are there in one package and give you. So how do you identify which is and the packages are sold as one entire package, not like say dry fruits is this much, this is different, and something like that Karan Johar's coffee gift hamper, that entire hamper is sold as one product. So therefore, in such particular situation, among all the products, we have to examine which has the highest rate of tax, and that rate is applicable on the cost of the entire gift pack. That cost is applicable on the cost of the entire gift pack. I hope there is clarity on what is a composite supply and what is a mixed supply. So 2 subsection 30 of the CGST Act defines the term composite supply. So what does it say? Composite supply means a supply made by a taxable person to a recipient. So therefore, it is a supply made by a taxable person to the recipient, and it consists of 2 or more taxable supplies of goods or services or any combination which are naturally bundled. These 2 words are very, very important to understand whether it is a composite supply or not. Naturally bundled. That means they come together naturally. They are not forced together. Laptop is there, means he has to sell it with laptop bag only. If a laptop is there, it is not like a laptop bag will come only when there is a laptop. So naturally bundled, right? So supply made where 2 or more taxable supplies are there, which are naturally bundled and supplied in conjunction with each other, in combination with each other in the ordinary course of business. That is what is the definition of the term composite supply. And one of which is a principal supply. The most important point. So what all have to be done? 3 elements have to be there, or rather 4 elements have to be there. 1, 2 or more taxable supplies have to be there. Number 2, they have to be naturally bundled together. They have to come and you have to sell it. Number 3, it has to be sold in conjunction or combination with each other. And 4th, out of these 2 supplies, 1 should be a principal supply. 1 has to be a principal supply. That is exactly what your composite supply. Then, so therefore, more than 1 goods or services are there which are naturally bundled. They are referred to as the composite supply of goods and services. It shall deem to be a supply of those goods or services which constitutes the principal supply there. Example, goods are packed and transported with insurance. The supply of goods, packing materials, transport, etc. is a composite supply, and supply of goods is the principal supply. So that means the entire supply will be treated as supply of goods, and the tax rate which is applicable to supply of goods only shall be applicable on the entire amount. Some examples. Travel ticket from Mumbai to Delhi may include service of the food also being served on board, free insurance, and the use of airport lounge. So in case, what is the travel, what is the main element here? Transport of the passengers is the main element, that is the principal supply. Use of airport lounge, insurance, etc., food, all these are auxiliary to the principal supply, which is transport of passengers. If a contract, again, further examples, contract is entered for supply of certain goods and erection and installation of the same also is done. They are naturally bundled composite supply. Example, air conditioner you are purchasing. That fellow comes to your house and does the installation. In the invoice is given. Principal supply, sale of air conditioner. Auxiliary or incidental supply is installation service. So whichever is the principal supply, that has to be taken. So therefore, in this case, value attributable to erection and installation also will be taxable as if they are the supply of goods. Some key factors which help in determining whether the services are bundled in the ordinary course or not. What are the factors you have to understand to see whether there is a natural bundling of service or whether it is a composite supply? First point is perception of the consumer or the service receiver. If the consumer perceives that he knows for sure what is the principal supply there, then it is very clear that it is a composite supply, like your supply of laptops. Second, majority of the service providers in the particular area provide the similar bundle of services. All laptop sellers usually sell it with their bags. So majority do that. So that also is a criteria to determine what is a composite supply. Nature of the service which is being provided also is to be tested. Other illustrative indicators. If elements are not available separately, all such things you have to take into consideration when determining whether it is a composite supply. Now, what is a mixed supply? Mixed supply also is defined under 2 subsection 74 of the CGST Act. Mixed supply means 2 or more individual supplies of goods or services or any combination thereof made in conjunction with each other by a taxable person. These are common. These things are common in both composite and mixed supply. So it is 2 or more individual supplies of goods or services or any combination thereof or made together for a single price. But important exception, such supply does not constitute a composite supply. Right? So therefore, such supply is not a composite supply. Right? It contains 2 or more individual services. It is made for a single price, and such supply is not a composite supply. Right? Sorry. So therefore, if it involves more than one goods or services which are not bundled together, they are referred as mixed supply of goods or services. It shall be deemed to be a supply of that goods or services liable to tax at the highest rate of GST. So amongst all the goods or services, whichever is taxable at the highest rate, that has to be taken into consideration in case of a mixed supply. So therefore, simple terms, more than one goods or service as a bundle will be shown as mixed supply. If such goods or services are supplied together for a single price, they are not bundled together and they don't qualify as a composite supply. Example here, package consisting of canned foods, sweets, chocolates, cakes, dry fruits, electric drinks, fruit juices, when supplied for a single price, it is a mixed supply. The one important point you have to understand, each of the items can be actually supplied separately. and it is not dependent on the other person. Aerated drinks can be supplied separately. It does not depend only if you sell dry fruits, you can sell aerated drinks. So therefore, in this case, whichever goods are the highest rate, that has to be taken on the value of the entire package. What are the guiding principles for determination? Naturally bundled. In composite supply, it is yes. Mixed, it is not. Supplied together, both are the same. Can be supplied separately. Composite cannot be supplied. Mixed can be supplied. One is predominant. In composite, yes. Mixed, no. Other supply is not aiming in itself for the recipient. Therefore, the main supply is the principal supply. The other supply is not very important. That is in case of composite. In mixed supply, that is not there. Each supply priced separately. Composite, no. Mixed, no. Pricing is together as a bunch. All supplies are goods. In composite, yes. Mixed are also yes. Services, yes. One is supply. All these are it. So therefore, these are the principles you have to keep in mind for determining whether it is a composite supply or a mixed supply. Some clarifications are issued by the government with regard to certain activities. With regard to printing of books, pamphlets, brochures, annual reports, where the content is only given by the publisher. The principal supply is the supply of printing service. Supply of printing service is the principal supply. So therefore, such supplies here, wherever the printing happens with regard to the brochures, annual reports, etc., such supplies will constitute a supply of service. With regard to printed envelopes, letter cards, etc., napkins, where physical inputs including paper is there, logo is given by the recipient. In that case, predominant supply is supply of goods. So here what is happening? Envelopes are there, tissues, napkins, etc. are to be given. In that particular situation, the content is not, there is nothing like a content here. Here, he just wants it in a particular way with the logo. I do the printing and give. Here, it is a supply of goods and not a supply of services. Because here, I'm actually selling the product of the letterhead. Whereas in the previous case, the content is given to me. I'm only doing the printing. I hope these points are clear. Retreading of tires. Tire retreading is if any old tire is there, you do the retreading so that to improve the life of the tire. So therefore, in retreading of tires, so what happens is usually the tires are taken, old tires are taken, the retreading activity is done, and then the tire is sold. So here the predominant activity is the retreading. So therefore, in this particular situation, it is a supply of service. Rubber which is used for retreading is an auxiliary supply. So any amount what you are charging only for retreading of tires is to be taken as a supply of service. But in case supply of retreaded tires, for old tires belong to the supplier of retreaded tires. Here what happens? There are two cases. One thing is I give the tire to this person. He takes the tire, he does the retreading and gives back the tire to me. That is a supply of service. Sometimes what happens? I don't have a tire only. Old tire is there with the supplier of the retreaded tires. He does the retreading and he sells the tire to you. That is a supply of goods. I hope this is also clear. So with this, we come to the end of chapter number 2. Let us look at certain questions based on what all we have discussed so that to evaluate our understanding based on this. First one, what is the taxable event under supply? Very simple question. Taxable event here is supply. What is supply? Given and defined in section 7 of the CGST Act. Supply of all goods or services is taxable under GST. Discuss the validity of the statement. Supply of all goods or services, we cannot say all goods or services are taxable under GST. We have to read section 7 along with the 3 schedules. If you see in one schedule, it says it is neither a supply of goods nor a supply of services. Therefore, in such situations, certain goods are not to be taxed, not taxed. So some goods, they are not at all a supply. Some goods or services are exempt under GST. So therefore, this statement is not totally valid. Whether transfer of title or possession is necessary for a transaction to constitute supply of goods, you have to evaluate here as to what is the transfer which has happened, what is the title which has happened, right? Whether it is totally necessary or not to constitute the supply of goods. Ownership can also flow in a future date. So without the transfer, like in a hire purchase transaction, or transfer happens now, ownership comes at a later date. Though it is an essential aspect, it is not like it is compulsory or necessary to constitute a supply of goods. So just go through these questions, whether it is a service or a good. If you go through it, you'll understand renting of immovable property is a service. goods forming part of business assets are transferred or disposed under whether or not for a consideration. Goods are transferred or disposed, transfer of goods, transfer of right in goods without time, then this is a service, transfer of title in goods under agreement, which stipulates that property itself pass at a future date. Hire purchase transaction, this is also transfer of goods. Whether this is composite supply, a hotel provides 4 days, 3 nights package where the facility of breakfast and dinner is provided along with the room accommodation. So here what happens, hotel is providing the package, breakfast food is provided along with it. So principal supply is your accommodation service. So definitely it is a composite service. Toothpaste company has offered the scheme of free toothbrush along with the toothpaste. Now this is a buy one get one free offer. Buy one get one free has 2 different supplies in it. So therefore it is, you cannot treat this as a composite supply because it is just giving an instant number 2. Now let us look at some that Satyamev printers will use its own paper to print the set books. You are required to determine the rate of GST applicable on supply of printed books by Satyamev printers, assuming rate of GST applicable on printing service is 18%, where rate of GST on supply of papers is 12%. Please try to answer this question. Whoever are listening, please try to answer this question. Let me see how much you have understood. Yeah, some answers flowing in. Yeah, see what is happening here as per the clarification which is given, where the content is provided, by the person and only the paper is used for the printing, then it is a supply of service as per the clarification which is given. So therefore here it is a composite supply where there are 2 supplies. One is the printing of service and one is the supply of paper. So the principal supply here is the supply of service which is here, that is 18% will be charged on the total. I hope this part is very paper. So therefore the printing services 18% is the tax which is applicable. So we go through the solution here. The circular is clarified. Supply of books, pamphlets, brochures, etc., annual reports, printing with logo, etc., are composite supplies. In case of composite supplies of printing of books, pamphlets, brochures, etc., where only content is given by the publisher or the person who owns the usage rights, while physical inputs, etc., is given for the purpose, it's called supply of service. So therefore here the main service, the supply of printed books by Satyamev printers, is a composite supply where the principal supply is the supply of printing services. So therefore the GST applicable will be 18%. Good. I can see some new names answering. Good. Glad to see that you all are active. Otherwise, usually Kaushiki, Dritiman, Dilip are the most active. Wish everyone have to be active because online, the only disadvantage is I cannot see my students, but I'm sure all of you are paying attention. Next one. Sudama Associates, a registered supplier, disposes the computers owned by the business without consideration, and it has not claimed input tax credit on such computers. Examine whether the disposal of computers by Sudama Associates qualifies as a deemed supply under Schedule 1. Try to answer this. Please give the reasoning also along with the answer. Tenancy right clarification, we will do one problem based on that. So don't worry. Tenancy rights, we are doing one problem also based on that. Kaushiki, you just said no. If you write like this in exam, it is very difficult. You should clearly given what is the exact answer. So therefore, whether it is a deemed supply computers. So since it is not claimed as an input, not claimed the input tax credit, the disposal of computers is not a deemed supply as per schedule number 1. Good. Next question. Ajatashatru Industries enters into a contract with an actor, Mr. Chandragupta, to act as a brand ambassador of products manufactured by Ajatashatru Industries. The duration of the contract is 5 years and contract fee payable before the end of the contract period. Chandragupta will have to repay to Ajatashatru Industries 50% of the contract fee received by him till the termination of the contract. At the end of the 3rd year, he terminates the contract. He has received the contract fee for 3 years at the time of termination. You are required to determine whether the transaction which is happening here, 2 transactions. First, he is giving the fees to him as per the contract. Fine. And the second, we have to the Rule 43A for 5% per quarter. This is an input tax credit, Mr. Sridhar, and we have some in that chapter. If I discuss that now, it will become very confusing. I think it is supposed with regard to tolerating non-performance of the contract. This is what is the concept which is discussed in this problem. Let us go to this problem. Here, what is happening? First thing is he is doing the agreement of the contract for 5 years. 50 lakhs per annum is the contract fee. Okay, before the end, if he terminates the contract, 50% he'll have to repay. So 3 years is over. For 3 years, he has paid 1.5 crores because 50 lakhs per annum is 15 to 3, 1.5 crores. 50% Chandragupta has to repay back. So there are 2 supplies here. One supply is given to the industries. Through industries is tolerating non-performance of the contract, which is a supply of service. Since the non-performance of the contract is being tolerated, for which a penalty of 75 lakhs, that is 50% of that 1.5 crores, is being repaid by Chandragupta to Ajatashatru Industries. That is the consideration which is involved, right? Tolerating non-performance is an act of the tax amount. This Ajatashatru is tolerating the act of Chandragupta for terminating before the expiry. 50% of the contract fee, 75 lakhs, is being point is clear. It is a supply only, Mithun, but whether it is a supply of service or a supply of good, that is the question here. It is definitely a supply, and there are 2 supplies which are based on composite or mixed supply. Let us look at the question. Shivaji Private Limited, a registered supplier, supplies the following goods and services for construction of buildings and complexes. First, he gives excavate day, because excavators, if you give, it's very difficult for them to operate it themselves. It is not some car where you can drive. You need qualified operators for that who can actually operate the excavator. Right, so manpower he gives at a per day rate, soil testing and seismic evaluation at per sample. So soil testing means per sample he charge. Fine. Excavators are invariably hired out with the operators. Very simple. No one will just hire an excavator. The operator also will come along with the excavator. Similarly, excavator operators are supplied only when excavator is hired out. Simply what that operator will come and do. Only the excavator is there, he will drive that excavator. For the given month, the receipts exclusive of GST of Shivaji Private Limited are as follows. Higher charges for excavators is 18 lakhs. Service charge for supply of manpower for operation is 20,000. Service charge for soil testing and seismic evaluation at 3 sites is 2,50,000. Compute the GST payable for the given month. Assume the rates of GST is as under: hiring out of excavators 12%, supply of manpower and soil testing is 18%. Please try to answer this question. Yeah. 2,16,000 on what? So here three elements are happening. One is service charges for renting or hire charges for excavators, service charges for soil testing and seismic evaluation. So three types of services are happening. He is hiring excavators, he is hiring manpower, he is giving, and the third one, he is also testing the soil. Three things are there. So first point, if you see, higher charges for excavators 18 lakhs. Very simple. It is 12% rate. So 18 lakhs into 12%, 2,16,000 is your GST applicability. Second one, service charges for supply of manpower 20,000. Now, higher charges of excavators as well as manpower is a composite sum. Very clear. Because only excavator is hired, along with that operator also is given. So it is a composite supply, and the principal supply is higher of excavators. So therefore, on this 20,000 also, the GST rate which is applicable to hire of excavators only will be applicable, that is 12%. So 12% of 20,000, 2,400 is the GST for service charges for supply of man. Third one, soil testing seismic evaluation is an independent supply. It is not concerned with renting out of excavators. So on that 18% GST, 2,50,000 into 18%. So therefore, these are the rates which are applicable. Hiring charges of excavators and supply of manpower for both these things, since it is a composite supply and the principal supply is hiring charge of excavators, 12% is applicable for both the incomes. And in case of soil testing, since it is an independent supply, 18% is applicable. I hope this point is clear. Two lakh 16, 45, 2,61, 2,63,400. You got 264,600. 263,400 is the correct answer. Soil test 18%. Kaushiki, very good. $128,400 on 18,20,000. How did you get that question? No. 18,20,000. 18,20,000 on the 12% GST is up to 12% GST. 28,400. I hope it is clear. 45,000 what you have mentioned is correct. I think it's a typo what you have written within. Now we go to the next question. Vikramaditya is a salaried employee planning to invest in stocks. He has opened a trading account with Vaida Brokers. During the month, Vikramaditya undertook future contracts without a physical delivery option, but are cash settled on the expiry of the contract, amounting to rupees 35 lakhs. Vikramaditya needs your advice whether such future contracts undertaken by him amount to supply and are liable to GST. Please try to answer this one. No GST as derivative. Correct. Important point here we have to observe is that there is no physical delivery option. That is the important point. Since there is no physical delivery option and it is a nature of security, so there is no question of GST because securities are not covered in the definition of goods. So therefore, on this GST, future contracts do not amount to supply and therefore they are not liable to GST. Next question. Angad Private Limited is engaged in the business of distribution of construction material. As an incentive, Angad Private Limited pays an amount of 75,000 to its employees upon achieving a specified sales target. The incentive is part of the salary of the employees, and applicable tax is deducted at source as per relevant income tax provisions. Angad Private Limited is of the view that GST is not leviable on such incentive paid, whether it is correct. Please try to answer this. Actual settlement GST will be applicable, but here only if there is a commodity underlying the derivative. If it commodity can be gold or foreign exchange, then it will come. But if the commodity also is a security, then still there is no GST which is applicable, right? So you have to be very careful with the wording. Any answer for the second question of one Mr. Angad? No. Correct as services reference to schedule 3 will further strengthen the quality of your answer. Very good. So therefore, in this particular situation, 75,000 gets paid on achieving a specified sales target. If the incentive is part of the salary which is paid, it comes as schedule 3, not a supply of good, not a supply of service. You don't get confused and don't take it as a gift. There are more than 50,000 gifts, so therefore taxable. Don't take that by mistake also. Gift of more than 50,000 only if it is not in the course of the employment, like that Surat diamond merchant who bought cars for employees. That is not in course of the employment. Main thing is when you join the employment and you get an incentive. That means you knew when you joined the employment that you are getting an incentive. You knew that already. But in case of gifts, you don't know that you are going to get that incentive. So therefore, if in case of gifts, you don't know that you're going to get a gift. So only in that case, if the gift is more than 50,000, it is a supply and GST will be applicable as per schedule 3. That too because it's a related person. And gifts more than 50,000 are there in schedule 2. Schedule 1, sorry. Not. Nandishwar manufacturer sends a certain category of yarn for processing to the job worker. Job worker undertakes the processing work on the yarn as per the requirement of Nandishwar manufacturers. During the process, the job worker uses his own material also. The processed yarn is sold by Nandishwar manufacturers directly from the job worker premises. Balance quantity of yarn and waste material is sent back by the job worker to Nandishwar manufacturers. The job worker is of the opinion that is using his own material also in processing, and hence the supply is in the nature of supply of goods as well as services. Do you agree with the opinion of the job worker? Please try to answer this. Yeah, correct. Process performed on some other goods, definitely it is a service. That is what is happening here. So what happens here? Any processing, here he sends the yarn for processing. During the time of processing, he's using his own material also. That doesn't matter. Main agenda is processing. And even if the yarn is sold directly from job worker premises, it doesn't matter. You're doing that only for convenience. and whatever is left out is again sending it back to you. So therefore, it's a supply of goods as well as services. So you cannot do that. So any processing activity or any other person's goods is treated as supply of service as per Schedule 2. The job worker, in addition to the goods received from the principal, can also use his own goods for providing the services of job work. These goods are not supply as such, but being used in the processing activity carried out. Thus, activity undertaken squarely falls in Schedule 2 and supply of service Ishwar manufactures. Next point, next question. Moksha Bhumi Industries has it stores the finished goods manufactured by it at a depot located in the state of Gujarat. So manufacturing unit is in Maharashtra, depot is there in Gujarat. Depot is owned by Punya Bhumi Limited, who is a related person of Moksha Bhumi Industries. Punya Bhumi has not charged any consideration for Moksha Bhumi for usage GST. Try to answer this question. If he sells in capacity of an agent, then definitely it is a transaction between the principal and agent. Again, it depends on who raises the invoice. Agent is selling the goods, but he is not raising any invoice. Direct the principal is raising the invoice, then it is not a supply. Yeah. So therefore, here what is happening? If you observe, it is a schedule 2. The supply between a distinct person. What is a distinct person? Establishment of two businesses. As I told you, as per GST registration, if you have the businesses in two different states, you have taxability of transactions involved in the securities lending scheme 1997. So here, please, in this case, in the solution, you have to identify. Discuss. It's there a separate chapter. In this case, if principals is transferring the goods to the job worker, it all depends on when the goods come back to him. Okay, there is 6 months, and for capital goods, it is 1 year is what I remember. I may be wrong. I'll just have to check once. So if he returns within that of supply by the principal to the job worker, only when principal sends the goods to the job worker and the inputs don't come back within 6 months. If 6 months are elapsed, still inputs didn't come back, or still product is not sold to the final customer from the job worker, it is just the job worker doing the job work and sending the goods, and job worker will raise the invoice. Yeah. So therefore, here what happens? As I told you, in the securities lending scheme, lending fee paid to the lender who is going to do it, and in these particular two transactions, that is the lending fee as well as the commission, are chargeable to GST. It is a supply and it's chargeable to GST, but there is no transfer of securities, even though the securities are lent. On that, there is no GST. That is exempt because securities are not covered under goods. Next one. Krishnadev is at order with Ramakrishna for procurement of certain goods from local market in China. Before the shipment of goods from China to India, Krishnadev sold such goods to Cristiano, a trader located in Brazil. The goods were subsequently shipped from China to Brazil. Comment on the taxability of the transaction between Krishnadev and Cristiano under GST. Please try to answer this. This is again a new provision, new clarification, so can be important from exam point of view. Yeah, it is definitely out and out supply. That means the supply is happening without the products coming into the Indian territory. So here what is happening? Confused. Even though it is a related part. And the goods are sold to Cristiano trader located in Brazil. So therefore, goods were subsequently shipped from China to Britain on this. Next one. Mohandas International entered into a transaction for import of goods from vendor in Italy. Due to financial issues, Mohandas International was not in a situation to clear the goods upon payment of import duty. Mohandas International sold the goods to Radhakrishnan Export House. Endorsement. Hope I'm audible. Yeah. So now, in this particular question, what is happening? Endorsement of title to the goods before the goods are coming into India. Here, what is happening? It is a high seas sales. As I told you, if the goods are being sold by endorsement of title to the goods when it is in high seas itself, in that particular situation, it is very clearly clarified it is not a supply. But however, please remember that if this Mohandas purchases the goods back in the future from the export house, definitely it will be chargeable to GST. Only if before clearance for home consumption, if the sale is done by way of endorsement of title, then it will not be subject, not a supply. But later, in case he purchases from the export house, that is very much a supply and chargeable to tax. Someone asked regarding tenancy rights. This is a perfect example and question regarding to this. Mr. Happy has a huge residential property located at a prime location in Mumbai, Maharashtra. He has let out the first and second floor to Mr. Peace for residential purpose in April. Mr. Peace surrenders his tenancy rights to Mr. Serene for a tenancy premium of 10 lakhs on 1st June. Mr. Serene has also paid the applicable uh, stamp duty and registration charges on transfer of tenancy rates. Moreover, Mr. Serene has also agreed to pay a monthly rent of 1 lakh to Mr. Happy from June. Discuss the determine the terminology or taxability of the transaction. So here, if you observe, there is a tenant which is there for the first and second floor. Apart from the rent what he pays, he also has a tenancy rights. What is tenancy rights? As per the law, you cannot straight away evict a tenant which who has been there for. So I give up, I transfer my tenancy rights to you for 10 lakhs. Also on that registration also is there because it is like transfer of a right. So on this transfer of right, taxable. So therefore, here what is happening is first transaction, there is a renting of immobile property, which is very much a supply of service. Also, further clarification was given that even with regard to tenancy rights, if the tenancy rights are transferred, even though there is a registration and stamp duty paid on that, it is not a supply of goods. It is to be treated as supply of service only. So therefore, two transactions, one is transfer of tenancy right of 10 lakhs, and even the registration stamp duty, no separate GST on that, it should be added to this total because principal supply is transfer of tenancy rights and therefore GST will be charged. And then monthly rent of 1 lakh is paid. That is a second transaction. So both these transactions are to be treated as supply of service. Next one, Rudraksh Kapoor, owner of Rudraksh Publishing House, donated some money to Divya Prakash Charitable Trust, memory of his late father, constructed a room for such donation, donated by Rudraksh Kapoor. Floor of the room constructed from the money donated by. Yeah. So here what is happening, if you see, in first case, there is no quid pro quo because it is only given as donated in the memory of the father. So therefore, in that particular situation, it is just a token of gratitude and personal, not a suppliers. But in the second situation, on the school run by it. So therefore, in the second case, it will definitely tantamount to supply. Then let us look at another question with regard to composite or mixed supplies. So with regard to this one, you have to or otherwise just go through this slide because the rates are also mentioned here. I want you to go through each question here and tell me the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 activities here. Give the reason also for each answer so that I understand. I hope I get whether you got the concept or not. Please answer for the others also. Three, four, five. Others only Kaushik is answering. Others also request to give it a try. Mixed supply, composite supply. I'll understand that you've grasped the concept if you can answer the queries. Yeah. Four, okay. Next. Yeah. Let me look at now the each case here and let's try to understand what is the solution. First one, supply of laptop along with laptop bag to a customer of Mumbai for rupees 55,000. So here if you see is my first fundamental example of composite supply. I had very clearly told you that composite supply means there are two or more supplies with one supply being a principal supply. So therefore in this situation, if a laptop is supplied with the bag, the principal supply is the one of the laptop only. Since it is the one with the laptop, therefore the rate applicable to laptop only will be applicable to the total transaction. So 55,000, the rate applicable will be 18%. First question answer is 18%. Second one, supply of 10,000 kits at 50 rupees each. Each kit is 50 rupees. amounting to rupees 5 lakhs. Okay. Each kit consists of one hair oil, one beauty soap, and one hair comb. So here, this is a classic case of a gift supply, where mixed supply, wherein there are two or more supplies here, and each supply has the capability to be supplied separately and independently. So therefore, you are not able to identify what is the principal supply in this particular situation. So therefore, since it is a mixed supply, the rate which is applicable is the highest rate which is applicable to the item. So if you see, hair oil rate is 18%, beauty soap rate is 28%, and hair comb rate is 12%. So therefore, beauty soap is the highest rate applicable. So therefore, on this entire 5 lakhs, 28% is the rate which is going to be applicable. That is the second question. Third one, 100 kits are given as free gift to Jaipur customers, all unrelated, on the occasion of Mrs. Kajal's birthday. Each kit consists of one hair oil, one beauty soap, cost is 35. Input cracks grade has not been taken on the goods contained in this kit. Very, very clear. This is a classic example of a free sample. So free samples are given to unrelated persons. Free samples means goods which are given without consideration. So in that case, without consideration, nowhere it is mentioned that unrelated persons free samples are covered as a supply. So therefore, in this case, it is not at all a supply. It is not at all a supply because no consideration is there. So therefore, there is no supply. And it is not covered in the respective schedule also. Right? So third one is the tricky part here. It is not a supply. So any rate what you have given in the third one is incorrect because it is not a supply at all. Fourth one, event management services provided free of cost to her brother, wholly dependent on her for his son's marriage function in Indore. Cost of providing such services is 80,000. So here what is happening? Though the brother's son is getting married, the service is being provided to the dependent brother. So members of the same family, brother, sister, grandmother, parents, etc. If they are dependent, we have to take them as relatives. So in this case, what is happening? Free of cost is being provided to a related person without consideration, category of a related person. So therefore, no consideration. We cannot say it is not a supply because it falls in the respective schedule. So therefore, 80,000 event management services, 5% will be applicable on this one. Because we have, how do you identify the value of supply? In section 15, you'll get more clarity. In such situation where there is no consideration, chairs and coolers. So therefore, the rate applicable is 12% on both this transport as well as the hire charges. I hope each question of this mixed and composite supply are clear. Is my video visible? Okay, fine. No problem. Fine. So now each of the slide what we covered, because this chapter is very, very important for us. We'll just do a short recap before we complete the session. So therefore here section 7 talks about the supply of services. All supplies such as these 8 items you have to remember: sale, transfer, barter exchange, license, rental, lease or disposal. Consideration and course or furtherance of business both are important to be understood. Then 7.1b is importation of service for consideration, course or furtherance of business not relevant. Schedule 1, made or agreed to waive without consideration. Schedule 2, supply of goods or supply of services clearly given, right? Next one, that is neither supply of goods nor supply of service, something like a negative list in the service tax. Then government also has the power to whether it is supply of goods or supply of services, government has the power to recommend. So inclusive definition, these are the ingredients of supply. And then taxable person means what? Person who is registered or liable to be registered. Barter exchange also covered. Importation of service also covered. We have seen some examples as well. These are the forms of supply which are covered in detail. We have seen examples for each particular point. Donations also we have seen. In regard to consideration, we have seen multiple examples. Course or furtherance of business, we have seen some examples. Cost petroleum is a clarification which is given. Race club commission, very much a supply. Financial services by banks, derivatives, if commodity or currency underlying is there, transfer is there by actual physical delivery, then it is very much a supply. Lending of securities, we have seen illustration also based on this. Transaction in instruments, interest swap, etc. This also is not a supply because it is in the nature of security. Right? Import of services, example we have seen. Import is there for whatever purpose, for consideration, not in course or furtherance of the business also, it is a supply. So disposal of business asset transfer, it has to be transferred to other person without consideration. Main condition is ITC should not have been availed. Some examples we have seen in this also. Good services between related or distinct persons. Someone asked a query now whether services also covered. Both are covered. There is no doubt about it. 50,000 more than in a year, more than 50,000 gift is given to employer-employee, on that GST is applicable. File related person definition we have seen. Distinct person we have seen. Family we have seen. I hope all this is very clear. I'm just brushing through so that you all remember what is going. I don't know whether how many of you are actually revising post the class is over. Examples on supplies without consideration. Principal agent transaction, we have seen who should raise the invoice in case of without consideration to be covered. DCA is basically guaranteed the payment, giving the loans, that also is there. Sales promotion schemes, free samples, items are given, whichever is goods, whichever is services are clearly mentioned here in these particular schedules. So I think this is also there. Taxability of tenancy rights. Now I hope this is clear. Tenancy premium, priority sector lending certificates, joint venture. Negative list in GST. Employer to employee services in course of employment not covered in GST. Court, tribunal, funeral, crematorium services, out and out supplies, warehouse goods, IC sales, grant of alcohol, liquor license, activities done, interstate movement of conveyance, except further supply of that conveyance. That is very much a supply. Then composite and mixed supply we have seen. Composite means principal supply rate will be applicable. Mixed supply means highest rate of tax will be applicable. And we have seen the perceptions of the consumer also, which depends on which one has to be taken into consideration. Fine. I hope this chapter is clear and all of you got a proper understanding based on what we have covered in this particular chapter. Any further queries? Visible now, clear, sir. Video and okay, done. So now, therefore, chapter number 1 and chapter this forward charge, reverse charge mechanism aspects will be there. Also, we will cover concepts with regard to interstate supply of services. How exactly, when exactly is an interstate supply, when it is not, some definitions, etc. That chapter 3 we shall take up in our next session. So the chapters which are allocated to me is our chapter number 3, and then the chapter of input tax credit, including the job work provisions, are to be covered then me, and then a revision class in the month of March also is scheduled. So therefore, a small change in my classes. The one on Saturday you will not be having. So Saturday there will not be any GST class. We will have our next class on Tuesday, 24th and 29th. So 19th, 29th will be by next 2 sessions, which will cover charge of GST as well as network issues. Any further network issues? I thought it was pretty smooth, except only in the middle. I don't know, for some reason it keeps coughing off. I hope there is a smooth flow of the subject. Anywhere you have not followed network issue, we'll be meeting in further classes also. Don't worry. Please feel free to send out your queries, and for the previous classes as well, in case there is any network trouble or something, I'll be glad to address it. So don't worry about that aspect. Fine. So with this, I conclude the class. See you everyone. I'll see you next on the Tuesday. to cover the chapter number 3. All the best. Good night.